Hello there. Today I'm going to show you how to make these 3 cards using a very simple inked and stamped masterboard technique. To make this masterboard, take a piece of A4 blending card and a selection of distress inks. Here I'm using mustard seed, wild honey, picked raspberry and rusty hinge. Don't worry about getting smooth blending, just get some colour down on the paper. So here I have the visible image Stars and Stripes stencil, and using a blending brush and distress oxide in picked raspberry, I'm adding a few random stars over the card. Next I take the Rays of Light stamp set from Visible Image, and using the very small star and spiced marmalade distress oxide, I stamp randomly across that background. Then I take the 2 circles from the same stamp set and twisted citron distress oxide and repeat that process. For the next step, I use the scribbly circle from the universal stamp set and randomly stamp across the background in picked raspberry distress oxide. This technique is superb for using up some of your small stamps which sometimes get overlooked. So now I'm taking 2 of the flowers from the Create It stamp set, and the larger flower is being stamped here in fossilised amber distress oxide, and the smaller one will be stamped in candied apple. So the final piece of stamping that I do on this masterboard is the stamp that looks like cracks from the same Create It set, and that's being inked up in iced spruce. Now you could do additional things with your masterboard like heat embossing or adding some stickles glitter to it. For my first card, I'm just taking a piece of scrap white card and adding the Singer from the Sing set by Visible Image, inked up in Versafine Onyx black. Then I colour the dress with distress markers in Spice Marmalade and add some shading with Rusty Hinge. The sentiment Good Times is taken from the No Regrets stamp set by Visible Image, and here it's inked up in Versafine Onyx black on a piece of the masterboard that's already cut to size. I inked up a spare piece of white card with Spice Marmalade distress ink and embossed it to make the band that went across the middle. And the final thing I did was take the small flower that has been used in the background and stamp that round the edge of the image in coordinating colours. For my next card, I'm using the Imperfection is Beauty stamp set by Visible Image and a small piece of masterboard where I've stamped out the smallest flower 3 times. Now here you can see I'm using a tiny piece of perspex just to protect the masterboard while I line up where I'm going to stamp the images, because sometimes you have a little bit of ink left on your stamp even if you have cleaned it. Once the images are stamped, just fussy cut them out. Here I've masked off a section at the bottom of the card with post-it notes that have been cut with a deckle-edged Spellbinder's die, and I'm brushing around it with some tattered rose and picked raspberry distress ink just to provide a little bit of colour around the sentiment and up into where the flowers will be. Now I'm adding the stems, leaving the masking in place, but using the Perspex technique again. Once the stems are in place, remove the mask, then stamp the sparkle sentiment from the Rays of Light stamp set. That's another one you used on the Masterboard. Here I'm adding the blooms to the card, one stuck to the card base and the other two at different levels with foam pads. Then I'll protect the blooms with a little bit of microglaze. The reason I'm doing this is because I was going to add some stickles to all three, and the distress inks and oxides would wick. Eventually I ended up just sparkling the top bloom though. For my final card, for the curves, I made a handmade template, and here I'm just drawing it on the back of a panel that's the same size as the card blank, and the square at the bottom is just where I've made sure that I still have room for my sentiment to go. Now I apologise, I hadn't realised that I was off camera here, and I'm stamping the sentiment from the Live Life Now set from Visible Image in mustard seed, spice marmalade and picked raspberry distress oxides. So here I'm just putting the card together, and I had a tiny bit of glue on the top, so I'm just using a normal eraser to take that off. Then I decided to use that tiny sparkle from the Rays of Light set that you used on the Masterboard and inked that up in the same three colours as I've used on the sentiment. And the finishing touch on this card is a coordinating pearl right in the centre of the sparkle. Now I did make a fourth card, but I wasn't happy with the way that one turned out, so I'm not sharing that one with you today. But even at the end of making 4 cards, I had this much Masterboard left, so there's still more cards that I can make from that one sheet of A4 paper. Well, I hope you found that useful, and if If you haven't already, I'd love it if you'd like and subscribe to this channel, and hopefully I'll see you on the next video.